There you are. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
All right.
I could see you better the other day when you were in that conference room. You're all the way across the other side of the table, and
Oh
so
yeah, coming to you from my hotel room tonight. So
well, okay. I see a railroad picture above you.
yeah, they've got some pretty nice artwork there.
Yeah. Just so you know, I'm the resident railroad nut on the board. So
Okay.
if you have any questions about the history of railroads in Missoula or Montana,
You're the guy.
I'm the guy, at least as far as the HBC is concerned. So yeah, it's really nice to have you on board for this first meeting.
Certainly nice to be here.
Yeah, it should be an interesting meeting. As you know, we went over the agenda, and the post hospital project will be an item of considerable interest, and it'd be interesting to see how many people we get showing up besides the applicant. So
Sure.
that'll make it a really fascinating get together. And what I'm going to do when I introduce you, I'd like you to give your own little thumbnail background and so forth, because I think people will be interested to know that and how some. So, what do you consider your home state? Tennessee, Arkansas?
I'm just blowing in the wind. I don't have a home state just yet. Hopefully Montana, right? It's a beautiful state.
I'm always fascinated with that kind of stuff because I was part of the family when my dad moved from Yellowstone National Park to Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. And as a result, I ended up at NC State, which was a great choice as it turned out. And then I've ended up traveling all over and actually worked 3 summers in Great Smoky Mountains National Park,
Oh, nice.
Gatlinburg. So I got to know East Tennessee pretty well and Western North Carolina and so forth. So I'm always fascinated to find out where people are from, just to get insights on their own insights on where they've lived.
Yeah, I guess I would say probably Arkansas. It's the home state right now.
Okay.
But I'm good anywhere. Anywhere I go, I make it home. So
Well, that's good. That's good to be adaptable.
yeah, adaptable, flexible, kind of have to be in today's world.
There you go. Okay. I see we have Jen's here and MCAT's ready to do the video on us, and we got two folks in an admin, so we'll be well covered in terms of logistics. So yeah, I think I always like to get on early for these things, especially now that I'm chairing, to make sure I've got everything in order.
Good evening. There is just me. I'm online from 2 accounts. It's me, Soraya.
Okay. Hey, Soraya. Thank you. Good to know you're there.
Yeah, and we are live on YouTube, and I think we are live on MCAT as well.
Oh, okay. And will Val be joining us, do you know?
I think she is. Elizabeth or Jen, do you know otherwise? Okay.
Jen's being incognito. Well, it's certainly not critical. I mean, she gave us a good backgrounder on the post-hospital project. So, and I think I've got everything else I need to proceed through the agenda. So it's not critical, but it's always nice to have her expertise and backup since she's so well versed in all this.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hi, Lavelle.
Hi, I was trying to get into this a different way and it worked, so I'm proud of myself.
Yay.
Yay! We can still have technology challenges after a year of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm involved right now in an accreditation visit to Virginia Tech virtually, and
Oh,
we're having to share documents on my drive and other forms of interconnection that I'm still getting familiar with. So yeah, I can certainly relate. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Ken.
All right.
Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Lavelle.
hello. So, maybe Soraya will catch this, but Steve Adler is over as an attendee. So if you could move
Yeah.
over.
What's that? You're breaking up.
Oh, good. Here he comes.
Yeah.
Here comes Steve.
We'll just keep watching that attendee list.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, because I was a bit stymied how to get over to real meeting. After a whole year, I'm still having technology problems.
And
User errors, let's call it that.
we were just saying that actually, a year of this, and it's still challenging. Kent, that's maybe something for your benefit also. If you can see participants, if you can see on the bottom of your screen, your
Right.
screen,
Yep.
and you click that, you can see there's panelists and attendees.
Okay. Yep.
And you, especially once the meeting starts, I think Soraya helps with this as well. Soraya, there's a couple more folks in that attendees that are going to be giving presentations. But once you are at the point of, we recognize the consultants that are going to be presenting, the people that are part of HPC and the staff. Otherwise, the attendees would stay where they are for a while until you are starting to bring in public comment. And and then I don't know, you probably have a script for the public comment where people might raise hands or something like that, and you would watch for that.
Right.
But that's where they're somewhere there, either usually in the attendees list.
Okay, good. Yeah, I've got that up. I see that Leif is now with us, along with Kathy, et cetera. So yeah, we're good to go here in about 30 seconds.
Laval and Kent, I have a quick question. Can I promote, actually I can promote both of you to co-hosts. So when needed, you can promote someone to panelists or allow them to enter a meeting.
Okay. I will rely on you guys that know the technology to make sure I do it all correctly. Okay. Well, welcome to the April meeting of the Missoula Historic Preservation Commission. Before we start, read a couple of things of interest relative to those who are tuning into our meeting today. Thanks for joining it, first of all, via this Zoom seminar or webinar. When I call for public comment, please use the raise lower hand feature to let me know you wish to be recognized. Our host, who's one of the staff, will allow you to talk and you'll need to unmute your mic. If you have joined us by phone today, you can raise and lower your hand by pressing *9 and mute and unmute using *6. If you are participating by phone, I'll call on you by reading the last 4 digits of your phone number. If you are participating by computer, I'll call the name that was listed when you entered our webinar. And just for anyone who doesn't know, the Historic Preservation Commission is charged with establishing a local historic preservation program, integrating historic preservation into local, state, and federal planning and decision-making processes. The Historic Preservation Program is designed to promote the preservation of historic and prehistoric sites, structures, objects, buildings, and historic districts. The Historic Preservation Commission is composed of volunteers from Missoula's neighborhoods, businesses, and preservation professionals, and was established by the Missoula City Council in 1989. Now, with that said, can we have the roll call, please?
Steve Adler,
Here?
Kathy Bickenhauser,
Here, having some technical difficulties.
Paul Felicity is absent, James McDonald,
Here.
Lee Fredrickson,
Here.
Patrick Swart is absent, John Conrad Sheath,
Present.
Kent Watson,
Here.
and Jackson Hill is absent.
I'm here.
Jackson is here. Sorry.
Sorry, I was having some difficulties.
Oh. Yeah,
Thank
Jackson.
you for saying something. And we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Now we move now to item 3, approval of minutes from the March meeting for the commission. Are there any comments, suggestions, or changes that we should discuss before approval? If others don't have anything, there's one thing I thought would be helpful in clarifying the minutes from that meeting. Under item 6, old business, 6.1, historic covenants subcommittee update. It would help because it then follows the structure of our agenda. If halfway through where it starts with the Laval Means Planning Services Manager, if that then became 6.2 and give it the title of Preservation Month Planning Subcommittee, that's really what it boiled down to being. Just clarifies what we're working on and easier for people to pick out. Is there anything else that anyone else caught that they'd like to see changed with the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve?
I move the minutes to be approved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Now we're moved to item 4 on the agenda, which is the opportunity for anyone in the public to make provide a comment on anything that's not on our agenda for tonight. So we will look at what we've got in terms of people that are interested in doing so and let you in if you wish to make a public comment at this time. I see nobody that's in the waiting room. So we will move on to new business. Oh, here we go. That's just the script for letting the public in. So move on now to our exciting item number 5, which is introduction of our new historic preservation officer, Elizabeth Johnson. And Elizabeth, once again, we've met with you via Zoom before, but public has not. So tell us who you are and why you're here.
All right. Hi, everyone. For those of you I haven't met yet, my name is Elizabeth Johnson, as Kent said. I just recently moved here from Arkansas last week. Very happy to be making Missoula my home. I have a bachelor's from Cal State Long Beach, a master's in history from Arkansas State, and I'm finishing up a dissertation from Middle Tennessee State University. I do come into the historic preservation position with a pretty wide range of public history experience, everything from archives and museums to historic preservation and the digital humanities. My own personal research and projects work primarily on uncovering often overlooked or ignored stories in the built and cultural landscape. And with 2020 bringing us a whole new set of unique challenges, I do think it's also given us a really great opportunity to find new and innovative ways to engage with the public and to get out and find new projects to do. And I certainly look forward to getting the chance to do that here. So thanks y'all for making me feel welcome here in Missoula. And I look forward to getting to know y'all a little bit better as I get settled in.
And you'll notice we greeted you with a snowstorm on Monday. If you happen to look out at the mountains, you saw that the snow level had dropped down to about 4,200 feet, something you don't probably see in Tennessee very often.
No.
It's just what we call typical Montana weather. You know, it's only April. I mean, we could still get snow right up until, when was that big snowstorm, you guys? June of '99 or whenever? So, yeah.
Yeah, I've gotten been snowed on every single month.
Kathy is our person who really gets out in the field, so she would know. So once again, it'll take some getting used to, but that's Montana weather. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. We're glad you're aboard, and we look forward to working with you as we move along in our preservation of historical and cultural sites throughout Missoula. Time now to move to item 6, old business. 6.1. Special presentation and discussion of the Fort Missoula Post Hospital project. This is, there's no motion required. This is strictly public information. So, and who's going to be speaking on behalf of the project applicant?
Kent, did you want me to provide just a brief synopsis before we heard from the presentation team? Yes, okay.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Since you did such a wonderful job putting that all together, you could probably read your words better than I can.
And I just brought the design team into the webinar, so that's why our screen just got a little bigger or smaller, however more people. So thank you. So just for a little more background or refresher or reminder, at your February HPC meeting, you heard an introduction of a project for the potential reuse of the post hospital at Fort Missoula and the idea of added new development on the vacant land adjacent to that site. That was an early overview of things that the property owner's design team was considering, and a chance for HPC members to provide any general comments. Today, the design team is back with an update on their project, giving us a sense of how things have been developing, and another time for HPC members to provide any general comments, ask questions, highlight any guidance, especially from your expertise on the several foundational documents that relate to Fort Missoula. I did send out about a 1.5-page guide sheet for you that gives you some of that, the foundational framework of guiding documents and zoning documents. And there are so many that I thought it might be helpful for you to have all that together as in one place. And they include things like the recognition of our growth policy in general, and then the more specific area plan for Fort Missoula. The nomination material for the listing of the fort on the National Register of Historic Places. There's a specific overlay, code overlay for the entire fort. And then of course, all of this is where post hospital, its site is inside of that fort. All these fort layers of information and guidance. So there's the historic Fort Missoula neighborhood character overlay, which references Appendix A, which is the development guideline standards for Fort Missoula. There's also the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. So this is in addition to other things that the design team would have to consider if they do proceed with the idea of a planned unit development, which is one of the things they are considering right now. Through a planned unit development process, there's additional review criteria and other layers of review criteria that are associated with a zoning amendment. So I just wanted you to have that foundation there for you. I know the design team was made aware of that material also. And with that, I think just being able to pass it over, I guess, back to Kent or over to the design team, whichever you would prefer.
Well, thank you, Lavelle, and I think this is an appropriate time for the design team to make its presentation. So if whoever's going to be leading that, if you could unmute your mic, I think, I'm not sure if they're in yet or not. Let's see. Soraya, do you have them?
Yes, I'm sorry. You have Joanna O'Connell, Douglas Newby, and David Hoffman. They are with Trey, and I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, Tresbirds. And then you also have Jamie Urbacher with WGM Group. Okay.
So if whoever's going to lead off the discussion could do that and introduce yourselves and who the rest of your team is, or have them self-introduce as they participate in the presentation.
Yeah, this is Joanna, and I'm sitting here with Doug Newby and David Hoffman. We're all in the same room, so we're going to be on one microphone. And let us know if you have trouble seeing. I'll share the screen here. All right.
Great. So can everybody see the presentation and also hear me? Can some head nods? Okay, cool.
So far, so good. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so the purpose of us being at your meeting today is to update you on the progress we've made since the last time we spoke. What we're going to be flipping through is a standalone PDF that we put out. I believe there's a link on the agenda to this meeting. We put this out to have a baseline out there of what we're thinking and where our heads are at with this project right now. This is sort of the best reference to where the design stands at this moment. So we're going to flip through parts of this pretty quickly, but this also has our proposal, which we didn't dive into in as much detail in the last time we spoke. So if you go to the next page, yeah, this standalone PDF, we're calling it, has 3 sections. One is this research piece, which we spent a lot of time last time we got together with this group going over. We looked into municipal zoning processes, the site context, the historic context. We met with a number of community groups, we're calling stakeholders in this situation. And we had some research conclusions. We're gonna flip through those pretty quickly right now because we've already gone over them with this group. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to stop me here. And Joanna, you could just go to page 18, I think is the one we want to stop on. So again, this is something we went over last time, and I don't want to spend too much time going over it, but we did come away with some conclusions. These were gone over last time, and I just wanted to reinstate them here as they're still the guiding principles for what we're doing or what our plan is to do with this development. Some basic conclusions for the post-hospital is that the exterior is really important, and that the grounds around it is also a really key part to what makes this this building in particular really historically significant. And then some conclusions we had from the overall site. And again, this is from reaching out to community groups, research we've done into the standards that Lavelle had mentioned before we got started. And a couple big takeaways from that were, one is that this is a public park, and it's really kind of Missoula's one of their primary open spaces, and it should be treated as such. The public quality of the space in the fort at large is one of the things that sets it out or sets it apart from other public spaces in Missoula. So maintaining it as a place for the public is crucial. It's something that we're placing a very high priority on that middle one there. That our goal is to maintain the fort as a place for the public. The hospital is the primary structure. That is still something we consider very important as well. The landscape is included in that, and this last one of any kind of like new buildings we're proposing adding are following this idea of being low profile, low density, not meant to compete with the hospital in any way. Doug, did you have something you wanted to mention right here?
I think, yeah, just at the beginning of section 2. So again, as Dave said, this is a PDF that's available. We hope the public shares it as much as possible to really understand the nuances of what we're proposing. So as we move into section 2 here, there's a lot of research that went into this that's available in section 1. As Laval stated, we are currently looking at doing a planned unit development. It's one of the things that's allowed by the current zoning of this property. And just wanted to go through what that kind of means. If a PUD is going to be approved for this site, the city of Missoula does have established intentions and objectives for what a PUD should be doing. And before we go through our proposal, I just wanted to run through what our kind of overall understanding of that is. And kind of the first one is there's an intention that a PUD should be establishing either traditional urban development, mixed use development, and or affordable housing. And on top of that, there's objectives that a PUD needs to establish how it's conforming with them. The first being that, there's a consistency with the city's adopted plans. So, we've gone through in the past, there's a Fort Missoula plan, I think last updated in 1993, that really talks about the need to preserve not only the historical cultural value, but also the ecological value and the recreational spaces, and ensure that new development is really responding to community need. In addition to that Fort Missoula neighborhood plan, PUDs also have additional objectives. Kind of the idea would be to try to check as many of these boxes with our proposal as we can. And so just the ones that we think are really, really critical here. One, flexibility and creativity in responding to changing social, economic, and market conditions to improve greater public benefit. 2, a variety in housing types. 3, a mixed use development pattern where residential, commercial, civic, and open spaces are located in proximity to one another. The incorporation of open space amenities and doing that in a low impact development kind of way. And lastly, trying to increase the amount of attractive, high quality landscaping. So in terms of a PUD objective, that's sort of what we were looking at since we are going down this route. How can we propose something that really kind of checks all those boxes and increases the value of this privately owned piece of land as a public asset.
And also crucial to that is this idea of historic preservation. Obviously, Fort Missoula is an incredibly important historic resource for the community of Missoula. And this site in particular has one of the, maybe more if not most historic buildings on this site in the post-hospital. Last time we spoke, we talked about the intention of preserving the hospital as best we can, restoring it to as close as we can get to its original design intent, and preserving it into the future as best we can. That hasn't changed, where we're still proposing that the grounds in front of the post hospital, all these large legacy trees, the landscaping, the organization, that's going to be preserved more or less intact for what it is right now. And then the building itself, last time we spoke about that being a combination of some offices on the upper levels and then something more public facing on the ground level to really invite the public into this so they can interact with and experience this building in the same way that you can tour other buildings on the fort now. All of that's stayed the same. We haven't adjusted that in our proposal at all. This is still kind of one of the primary objectives of this development is to restore and preserve the post hospital. And I think you can flip through the next couple slides. That's something that we haven't changed our stance on at this point.
I'd say again, the office use for the hospital, we do think that's going to be the use that requires the kind of least extensive renovation. Won't require any big structural changes. The building's laid out in a way where we feel like an office use will be able to go in there pretty easily. And we can focus more of our dollars on the restoration and preservation of the historically important pieces of this building. And again, open it up to the public. So that's why, for one reason, we think office is appropriate here. Two, having heard from stakeholder groups that office would be a generally highly acceptable use here. There's several buildings that are currently have office space on the fort. And then three, in this attempt to kind of promote a mixed use development proposal, office is a big part of that. We'll say the development team's current plan is to kind of do a long hold on this building and lease out this office space going forward. So with that, we'll get to the kind of new development portion of this plan. That's the piece we haven't talked about previously. See in the upper right-hand corner here, everything that's not kind of has this orange piece. That is where we're really talking about putting a lot of dollars into restoration and preservation. So, not just leaving it where it is now and kind of putting a use in, but extensively bringing these back to what they were and then preserving them from that point. So that includes bringing the landscape back up. It includes that hospital, includes the nurses' quarters, and we're trying to figure out a use for even this old shed that's kind of in tough shape. So that's a big chunk of what we're proposing here. In order to pull that off, we do think some new developments appropriate from both the pro forma financial standpoint. This is privately owned land, has been for several decades before coming into the ownership of the new development group. And in order to really do this restoration and preservation without asking for any sort of public funds, do it all with private investment, there is a trade-off there of proposing some new development. So we'll go through the pieces of that plan. I think Joanna, if you go to the next slide. As we were developing this, we did keep in the forefront of our mind kind of what a PUD is asking for, really this kind of low density, mixed use development, promoting new uses that are increase the public utility of this privately owned space, kind of all of that, balancing that with kind of, I'd say, a similar vision that the developer has for this site. So I'll walk you quickly through what kind of these colored boxes kind of mean. Up in the top left corner, we've got two long rectangles there. Those are about 50 feet wide for scale. We're proposing two 5,000 square foot each, so 10,000 square foot total of light commercial. So the pink would be potentially restaurant / cafe space. The intention of kind of serving not only the people who work at the fort every day. We've heard from stakeholders that amenities like a sandwich shop, a cafe would be really welcome, where they could walk, from the building just north of here, or walk from the CDC, or walk from the museums to be able to have an amenity like that. We also see this as potentially increasing the public utility of the fort in general. if people are out here recreating, walking on the trail network, visiting the museums, there's a place for them at the end of that to go have some lunch, play with their kids, etc. So that's really what the aim of these commercial buildings would be. In addition to that, you'll see this green space kind of surrounding them. That's roughly, I believe, 35,000 square feet of additional landscape. Currently, that is sort of vacant, unmaintained, unimproved land with several overhead utilities running through. And our intention is to really open this up as private land to be a public park. So really improve this, new landscaping, potentially introduce some new opportunities for highlighting some of the invisible history at the fort that's been identified, and really try to expand the open grounds that we're already attempting to preserve here. So down to the bottom of the site and the bottom right corner, these orange rectangles represent townhomes, probably would be condoized and for sale. Back up real quick, the commercial piece along with the historic buildings, the developer would probably hold on to long-term. Financially, it's really helpful to have something for sale to make this whole thing work. Additionally, we do feel like introducing some residential here does a couple of nice things. You know, in addition to promoting this, these objectives from the PUD, some of this mixed use development, promoting various housing types, sort of responding to social and market changes in Missoula. We feel like housing does that at this site. It will also, we feel, create more of a 24/7, 365 type of community where there's several, you know, we have 15 townhomes, those are 15 additional stakeholders who are gonna really wanna see, you know, Fort Missoula improved, be a really attractive public amenity. And I will say, I think one of the potential worries about residential at this site has been this notion of potential privatization of the fort. And I'd say we've been very intentional with this plan, not only in the siting, but the massing of that residential to try to mitigate that concern. So we've, you know, pushed them to the far south of the site, as far away from the rest of the fort as we can. They're going to be relatively shielded from view from the rest of the fort by our new proposed commercial buildings and landscape. And there's no private yards. So instead of, you know, all these each have their own private yards, potential fences around them, we've consolidated all of that area to try to provide this public park. So that kind of rounds out what we think is a really low density, low impact, mixed use development that we think potentially does a lot to increase the public utility and value to the fort in general. Is there anything you guys? So I'd say where we are in general, and again, we kind of went through these next slides, highlights each of these things. Where we're at right now, we have this plan. We're currently working on what the actual architecture will be. We're hoping that we can come back next month and actually present that. We're getting pretty close with the developer to what that could actually be. So we don't have elevations or renderings of what these buildings might be, but we can talk more about what the massing would feel like. And we'll start with the commercial buildings. Joanna, if you want to go through those renderings.
So this, you can see the site plan in the top left. This perspective is showing a view from the street from Moss Road right there. looking back along the street. So this is the Google Maps image. And then this is our quick render of those commercial spaces. So the architecture here is just gestural. We're working on what that looks like right now, but in this image, it's just kind of to get at the scale of the building and suggest that the architecture will kind of be in keeping with some of the Civilian Conservation Corps era buildings that are already within the fort. So the idea here is that they're pretty close to the road, but they're held back enough to maintain this tree-lined boulevard from the City Beautiful era. The architecture will be keeping in line with what's in the fort. It's one story. We want to increase the walkability of the site. So right now there's no sidewalk along here. There's a sidewalk down by the post hospital, and then there's a sidewalk just off screen here by the CDC. And we'd connect that. And we've been talking with the Parks Department about how to connect to the other trails down by the river and through the fort. And then the other reason for these commercial buildings is reducing the visibility of the private condos. So from this street, you really won't be able to see the townhomes. They'd be back here and screened by these trees, the commercial buildings, and then another row of trees in the center of the site. So the second view, we're standing kind of in the middle of our new park here, looking back towards the post hospital. So you can see the post hospital and its grounds in the background there, and they would stay, basically as is, restored building, restored landscape. And again, this is also gestural. We don't know exactly what's happening here, but with the idea that it's maybe a restaurant space with some outdoor seating that opens up onto this landscape. The parking for the commercial would be it'd be this row of parking here screened by these trees, and you would walk through this new landscape to this commercial space. And a big reason for this is activating the site with new low density structures with the idea that if people come to visit the site, visit the fort, visit the museums, they could stay a little longer and come grab something to eat and play at the park. We've suggested that maybe there's a playground component here as well.
Real quick, one last note on parking. You see in that top left corner, that surface parking is meant for these commercial buildings. The parking for the townhomes would be self-contained. So there'd be either a garage or carport within the footprint of each townhome. And just for some scale, those are, somewhere between 1,800 and 2,000 square foot townhomes, probably 2 level.
Yep.
So I think, we wanted to get through that. We want to get as much feedback from you guys as we possibly can. Quick note with feedback, section 3 of this standalone document. We're not going to go through it, but we've gone through 2 rounds of what we're calling stakeholder feedback. 15 different groups or so. We've talked to them twice. First about what our research was and to get their input and sort of feelings about what the fort is and wants to be. The second round of feedback was showing people this plan and getting their initial thoughts on it. So we do have that feedback published. We've talked to these different groups about being able to publish that to the public. Everybody agreed to that. So if people want to dig into that, we again recommend clicking the link on the agenda. And there's as much information in here as anybody wants to look at. So I think with that, we'll open it up to questions.
So are there questions of the presenters?
I have a whole raft of questions, if that's okay. Just to get into some discussion, possibly.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The one comment before I get into that is in your rendering showing the streetscape with the commercial buildings. I just noticed that the commercial building was right up on the sidewalk. And I was trying to think of any place else in the fort that had kind of building right up on the sidewalk. And I think if you're going to fit the pattern of the fort, you may need to look at a little more setback there. Like I said, I'm just trying to figure out where this precedent is set in the fort, and it may be there. I'm just not thinking of it. And then the statement you said that the commercial buildings kind of block the view of the condos. It also blocks the view of that park between the commercial and the condos. So it just seemed kind of like a disconnect to me that that space would be really inviting, but it seems to be visually blocked off. So it just seemed like a little contradiction. But I know this is all conceptual. I know it's just kind of showing the spirit of it. So I don't want to get too deep into it. I did a bunch of homework, and it's really kind of in preparation for understanding a PUD that's on its way. It's not, I don't think we're anywhere near an HPC application, but with our board and our office needing to comment on a PUD, I had a whole bunch of questions kind of regarding the PUD, and they may be more for staff than the development team too. But when let's see, there was wondering if there is any riparian setback from the river, if multifamily standards apply to condos that would be on the river. And I realize a PUD can kind of set its own standards. This is why I'm wondering what's likely to make it into the PUD, because that will shape the rest of what is to come. The roads are primarily owned by the county, the Northern Rockies Heritage Center, and the Army. Is that a problem at all with access? I know they've been publicly used forever. Little worried about density and the density of this site versus the density of the fort in general, and would encourage you to kind of look at existing context and maybe do some figure ground diagrams, because I think that'll help everybody understand better. And I would still like to leave opportunities open for interpretation, for historic interpretation of the site, and want to make sure that what you guys are proposing aren't ruling out any significant interpretations coming down the road. So that was just kind of the list of PUD issues I had. And then also a couple points that, and this is probably more for staff, is I noticed that the zoning zoning says for the zoning district that when you look at the allowed uses, it says there's a P or a C, and anything that's designated by a dash is expressly prohibited. And it mentions most housing types except for hospital, or most residential except for healthcare facility is expressly prohibited, as well as restaurant. And I'm wondering, how does that work with the PUD if what you're proposing in a PUD appears to be expressly prohibited by the underlying zoning? And then was also wondering if the underlying zoning has any say in setbacks and site standards as well. And we may not know that yet because it's not in the PUD process yet. But if we can get a feel for what's likely coming down the road and what other PUDs look like in those regards, or just wait till the PUD comes out. I don't know. What say you, Laval? I know that's a lot.
I was writing your points down fast, and I'm going to try to take a few of them and then see if there's others. I mean, certainly some of it is design team related, riparian standards. What an overlay does is it sits on top of the base. So if you're not if you're not addressing it explicitly, like riparian, then you would be using the base riparian.
Okay,
So if there's no override of it, then you are going back to what does that require in the base city general requirements.
okay, cool. Thank you.
For multifamily standards, it really depends on what is being proposed. Same concept applies. If an overlay doesn't explicitly address it to change something, to provide an extra requirement or relief from a requirement, then you use the base requirements.
Okay.
In this case, well, it will depend on what's being proposed. Town home standards have a different set of standards than multifamily does. Condo might be multifamily, or it could be considered a series of attached buildings, in which case then multifamily standards don't get triggered. So it sort of depends on how it is developed and proposed. So that might be one of those things we really won't know enough about for a while. Did that make sense, what I was saying?
It does, yeah. It means I think I'm jumping the gun on my worries, but just
sorry, go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
no, just that this will be all taken care of in the PUD process, right? And then at some point, preservation will be asked to comment upon an application. So I'm just trying to look forward into what a PUD might look like as it comes forward.
Well, a lot of times a PUD, we haven't had PUDs as often lately, but a lot of times a PUD, what it requires is pretty specific details.
Okay.
You know, it requires the massing and an understanding of uses. You had a question about how the base zone has a list of permitted uses and prohibited uses. And so any overlay that sits on top of a base zone can adjust those uses.
Okay.
So that's why even the neighborhood character overlay that is on top of it has a series of prohibited and permitted uses. So in this case, the permitted use is pursuing a planned unit development. Inside of that planned unit development, you have the ability to propose uses as well as design and some customizing of setbacks or what else that might be, and conditioning the project. So if there's, it's very customized and you get to see the massing of it take shape. In this particular instance, we have the added layer of design and the consideration of the criteria from the preservation permitting that needs to be left to the Preservation Commission, if you will. We don't want to be in a place where you are restricted by design because the design, physical building development design decisions have been made too early, that you have to be able to see that at a preservation permit level when the building permit plans come in. So we will work on, a level of condition to make sure that HPPs have the purview for design detail and reflection on that. The road improvements, I think that's a great point and something that the design team and the land use and permits team and other city agencies are going to have to take into consideration. You had some other design suggestions. Then you asked about I think that covered it from
Yeah.
what I could help you with. So,
Yeah. So, and it was just, like I said, just kind of blurting out everything I was thinking about as I was going through it in anticipation of the PUD stage, because some things have to be set before we can even get to an HPP. And so I'm just trying to anticipate what that may look like and what we may be commenting on as it comes through.
Steve, if we might address your first comment real quick.
Sure.
Just like to say, there's a balance between kind of the historic preservation and respecting the kind of precedents that are out there, and the functionality and trying to take a piece of private land and turn it into something that the public is really invited into, and that will actually be a year-round really great amenity. The reason I bring that up, we had looked at options where, you know, we pushed the townhomes, we had the parking, and then we had the commercial, you know, directly adjacent to that parking, and had that park on what would ultimately be the north side of those buildings. And it was something where we were looking at it and said, you know, well, where's the CDC building set back to, kind of immediately to the west? Potentially that, you know, to justify where those are from a setback standpoint from the road. But more importantly, if we're going to do, you know, invest in a new, you know, really big park, shouldn't that have, you know, a south-facing aspect to it and not have buildings preventing, you know, that direct sunshine from getting to this park, so that when people are sitting at the restaurants, nice summer day, you know, even nice late fall day or whatever, that's a really usable amenity more year round than if we put that on the north side of the buildings.
Okay.
So all that's to say, we're trying to balance, you know,
Sure.
historic piece, respect, you know, everything that's unique about this, but also do a mixed use plan that has some real public utility that's going to be something people want to use.
Okay, I have a couple of questions for you folks. Just to be clear, the parking that you're showing is all strictly for the commercial and restaurant uses, is that correct?
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay. Then the other thing, I've been involved the past several years in working with the university and so forth on the properties that basically surround you. And one of the things that's always come up is public access to the river. And I'm wondering, to what extent have you thought about that? And I'm assuming that you've been interacting with the university as you've proceeded as one of the groups you've been in touch with. But I just wonder what your thoughts are about access to the river from the project.
Yeah, we have talked to the university, understand their kind of goals for, you know, creating a regional trail network. The developer is very excited about the potential of having that connection through our site. So, you know, not sort of skirting around it, but actually winding the trail network through this new park, having interactive historical pieces along the way. Really think that's a huge benefit and something that they really want to promote and figure out what the best way to do that is with the university and the other surrounding stakeholder groups.
Is the in that item you put up on the last screen about your feedback, is that list the groups that you've been in touch with and who you've been in touch with to discuss this?
Yes. And so, yeah, that kind of comprehensive list of everybody we've talked to exists in a couple places.
It's up.
If you want real quick, we can go through exactly who we've talked to. If that's beneficial.
It's not really necessary at this point. It's just good to know who you've interacted with, because those of us that have been around in Missoula for at least 25 years or more will recall, and I think we brought this up before, that, you know, the fort is a pretty sensitive area in terms of public interest. And so it's always nice to know whom all you've been in touch with. And it sounds like you've really done your homework in that regard. So it's nice to see. Thank you for putting the list up. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we've got the groups listed here at the beginning, and then at the end, we've got feedback, and most people were okay with their names being put on here, and kind of what we heard from those groups. So that there's some individuals that we spoke with as well.
Just to reiterate, anything you're seeing in here has been like double vetted with these groups. So we're not misrepresenting them in any kind of way. We really tried to make sure that we got their approval and they felt like we kind of captured what their feelings were.
Okay, thank you. One other thought I had, I saw some reference in one of the slides you put up about calling it Missoula's Central Park. I'd caution against that only because I was on a committee that looked at what was then called Central Park that surrounds the entire fairgrounds right in Midtown. So you may want to look at other options.
Yes, that's not what our proposal. I think currently the leading candidate is Fort Missoula Commons, or the Commons at Fort Missoula. That city park was more referent. We really feel like the people who are, have a real vested interest in the fort view it like a central park. It's like that. It's that valuable to Missoula.
Yeah.
That reference was coming, but the Commons is what the leading candidate for the name is at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Other questions of the development team from the board?
Yeah, actually, I have some questions and comments.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Hello. So when you were talking about how you were going to pay for this, you had mentioned that you didn't want to ask for public funds, and I just wanted to get some clarification on that. Is there an objection to that, or I was just curious about that comment, make sure that I understood it. And then as far as the new development, I was wondering if you had considered, instead of putting in condos, putting in more offices, because offices seem to be at a pretty high premium. And because you've mentioned several times that offices are already out there and that other stakeholders brought that up. So perhaps, I was wondering, had you considered just putting in more offices instead of those condos? And you had mentioned that the condo owners would not have private yards. So I was wondering, how is that going to impact the public's perception of Fort Missoula still being a public park if there are tenants and or owners there 24/7? Just making sure, I want to make sure that Fort Missoula is still an inviting place for the public that uses the fort actively every single day. And you talked about the density of development. And so I was wondering about the timing of the use, especially in regards to the parking. You had mentioned that the parking was designed for the restaurants. So where will the condo owners be parking? And with having those condos there, some of the current uses for the entire Fort Missoula site, there's weddings, gatherings, big giant meetings and whatnot, especially at Heritage Hall. And I was wondering, how do you see what you're proposing? How is that going to affect those activities? How will those activities affect what you're proposing? I think that was everything.
We'll try to hit all those. First, in terms of how this project would be financed, I don't think there's necessarily like an aversion to using public funds. It's just been mentioned that this will be an entirely privately funded project. Kind of see it as a potential benefit or selling point in that, a building that's currently sitting in a landscape, for that matter, that are sitting vacant and kind of decaying a little bit every year by neglect, it's good for the public for that stuff to be brought up back to a high standard, particularly, you know, given the developer's desire to make it publicly accessible, and to do that without using any public funds, not put that burden on the actual public, but provide the benefit while paying for it privately. What was the second question?
Offices versus condos.
Yeah. So in terms of the office question, let's say for really the developer's desire is to create a mixed use. And it's there in the name, the commons, a low density, low impact mixed use community that would really thrive 24/7, 365. And, you know, in addition to that being the vision of the developer, we really feel strongly that that's in line with what the objectives of a PUD as defined by Missoula is looking for. You know, we look through the list of what a PUD should be doing. We look through the list of what, you know, Fort Missoula's neighborhood plan is looking for. And we really think the mixed use commercial office housing is right in line with what a PUD should be, and ultimately having more of a 24/7 365 presence at the fort is going to increase safety. It's going to increase, you know, just the amount of people who are using it, increase people coming to the site, whether that's just for the commercial or they're hanging out there, people visiting these new homeowners. We do feel that, you know, the roads got brought up. They're in a state of disrepair and neglect as well. So in addition to the developer potentially being a voice for advocating for the fort, we'd be adding several other new stakeholders who would have an important voice. You know, so for all those reasons, you know, we have talked about what if this was just all office, but we strongly believe that the housing is actually doing a lot to support the kind of mission of what a PUD is and improve the you know, the overall utility of the site for the public.
Maybe I can hit those other two questions with one stone here. Parking for the townhomes we're proposing is provided in those orange blocks. It'd be like a covered parking or garage situation. The place for the car.
Part of the structure then.
It would be part of that block. And it would come off this parking zone here. So maybe in response to the other one where it's how does this not make the fort feel like someone's backyard essentially? It's that these townhomes are really kind of like pushing their back to this fort or to the open space here. And in that way, we're making sure that it doesn't have like a piece of land that's sort of like informally that property owner's piece of land. It's really just where the garage happens, and it would be opening up towards the river. These are pushed back on like the very south edge of the fort. Not only our site, but the fort in general. This is the very like southern edge of it. So we think the combination of having these things kind of turn their back to a degree to the open space here, and also having them push like pretty far south on this site will really mitigate that effect of this feeling like private land.
I mean, in terms of integrating with some of the things that are already happening at the fort, I think the way we're addressing that is really trying to make it feel like public land, even though it's privately owned. So part of that is increasing the square footage of attractive landscaping. Part of that is wanting to connect to these regional trail networks. Part of that's wanting to, you know, get Tate and Matt involved with, you know, what the potential for sort of historic interactions and pieces that could be in this new park would be. You know, part of that's trying to do this kind of commercial, a little bit of commercial piece on the lower level of the hospital so people can actually get into that building. I think the developer is very interested in connecting to the rest of the fort in a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of detail that can get fleshed out as we keep going here. But that really is the intention, is to make this private land feel like a public amenity.
What was the last thing that you said? If you want the developer wants to connect with the fort and feel like the public what? I'm sorry, I missed that last statement.
Just that this is it's a privately owned piece of land, but it's actually a public amenity. They really
okay, thank you.
Feel like a public amenity.
Are there other questions from board members of the development team?
I have a couple of questions. You may have said this, I'm sorry if I missed it, but what are the green spaces in between the condos? And then I was wondering if you'd had any thoughts about what type of interpretation you might include in this. That's all.
Yeah, so the green spaces between the condos are just landscaping. We felt like breaking up the mass of these condos is helpful for not creating density that's competing with the hospital itself. And by interpretation, do you mean it's kind of like park landscape piece and what that's going to be sort of historically referencing? Is that correct?
Oh, I thought you had mentioned like including some interpretive signs. I was wondering if there was any other interpretive elements you had thought about including yet, or if that's in the future.
We're still pretty open on this end, but an idea we've kind of been coming back to is there's a fair amount of the historical architecture on the fort kind of begins in the early 1900s with these the post hospital, the officers' row quarters, the buildings that are used for the Forest Service now. But there was a lot going on there before that time. This kind of like invisible or like hidden history that we're really interested in exploring. Did you have something?
I mean, just some examples of that. You know, there's the original indigenous habitation of the Missoula Valley. There's the initial founding of the fort in the 1870s. You know, the 25th Infantry Buffalo Soldiers spent time at the fort. There's the internment camp piece after, you know, most of the buildings you see have been developed. There's a lot of stuff that's happened at the fort that there's not an actual architectural kind of monument to. And I don't think we want to be recreating buildings that are necessarily like trying to tap right into that. But there's, you know, materiality and massing and some other things that we can potentially do that could reference some of that stuff that we're exploring right now. In terms of what, you know, the park itself and additional interactive pieces, I know the development team is eventually even up right now. Ken Wolf is from out of town. Jim Pelger lives in Missoula. Max Wolf lives in Missoula. I know they're very interested in talking directly with Tate and Matt to see, you know, what might be appropriate for the fort in general. So I think it's something that's being developed, and we hope maybe by this time next month, if we are back on the agenda, that those are the types of things we could be discussing with you guys.
Other questions from the board to the development team?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, John Chase. I have a few questions for the.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And for the design team, and full disclosure, I do this kind of work in my business life. So I understand where you're heading. I compliment the research you've done. But the first question I have is, does the developer intend this to be a phased development?
They do not. They want to do it all at once.
Okay, great, great. And that includes the restoration of the hospital. So all work would happen at one time?
Correct.
Okay, great, great. That's good. The second, and I'm a new member as well. That's another disclosure to HPC, even though I have some other HPC experience under my belt. This is more of a planning question, and the preamble is I'm only posing it because if it becomes a problem to solve, the site plan may look different. And that's the road access to the commercial parking and the townhome parking. I'm seeing what is in effect a dead end road. Am I correct about that?
So sort of. If we were to zoom in, kind of the idea is that the actual asphalt portion is white, and we'd essentially, for fire access and some of those other things, there would be like what we consider a pervious paver, grasscrete, sort of, 15 feet wide, enough to allow those types of things to connect to the historic rotunda drive in front of the post hospital.
Got it.
So we're, it's going to feel like a dead end. Our intention is to not have that drivable surface feel like a drivable surface, but there will be, for fire access and a few other reasons, an actual connection back out.
That's great that you've have that, because first responders hate backing up emergency vehicles. They just will not do it. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear you've considered it. And then my third comment has more to do with something that you're not yet showing, and that's building massing. And want to know that, well, what I see is the townhome footprints zigzag, creating when you go up to in the third dimension, it's going to create a zigzag facade inevitably that I haven't found. I don't see that prototype at the Ford at all. And it's going to be a volume that is just, like I said, not seen. And I was wondering if you've considered looking at current prototypes that are there. So I've spent a couple of Sundays walking around, and what I see is rectangular solids set in a very broad field. Now, it's a challenge when you're trying to design townhomes, but if you zoom out on the site just a little bit for directionality, to the right, if you keep walking around this path around the road, to the right of this in the screen, there's a couple of buildings that look like, in my parlance, duplexes, 1.5 and 2.5 story duplexes, and which I was just wondering if you'd looked at volumetric prototypes that are already there as a way to inform the new volumes that you're going to be, specifically the townhomes. Had you considered anything like that?
There you go. At this point, we're still pretty loose on that. I think it's something we're diving into. We'd like to get on your guys' schedule for next month to really start talking about what the massing of these looks like and what the elevations start to look like. It's something we've noticed kind of lightly getting into it, and I completely agree with you that these sort of massings present something that's maybe a little unique for the fort right now. And that's absolutely something we'll be investigating, how to treat the kind of massing and finishing of these townhomes.
Thank you. Those were just questions, and hopefully they're helpful. Thanks for the answers.
They are 2-story. I don't know if we mentioned that. They'd be 2-story, and then the commercial would be 1 story.
Mm-hmm.
I understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board members to the development team? Is there any public that's sharing our meeting today who wishes to comment? I didn't see anybody. Just looking through the list, looks like we have no one of the public who was on the call with us. So, team, before we move on. Okay, well, thank you very much for a very informative update on where things are going. And this is going obviously an ongoing work in progress for everybody involved. And we appreciate your coming to us and bringing us up to date on what you're doing and providing all the answers to the questions that have been brought up at this time. So again, thank you very much. And we'll now move on to the rest of our agenda.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is under old business is an update of the Historic Preservation Month meeting we had last week. And I think I'm going to defer to Jim in terms of reporting out what we talked about. And I'll try to fill in any gaps. Maybe staff can help with what they can recall from where things stand for planning for next month. And Elizabeth, you were in on that one as well. Or no, actually you weren't. That's right. Were you? I've forgotten. My gosh. Anyway, so we're now to talking about what took place on Preservation Month discussion.
Okay, thank you, Kent. A few things we're trying to figure out what is going to be best for this short time period and getting things together for May. And one of the things that we talked about was looking at the awards and the awards from last year and promoting those a little more since they were not really promoted last fall. And also working with the Wilma on their 100th anniversary and their efforts. And I think John had put together some notes, his meeting with the Wilma folks. And I forget who the person was, but anyway, I believe you had some notes did you submit those to Jen or somebody? I did not see those, so.
Yes, Jim, I've been challenged with COVID reactions. So no, I have not had a chance to, in my family. So I've been down for the guy. I did not submit those notes. I can shortly after the meeting, but if you don't mind, can I give a verbal update on that?
Sure, yeah.
So I had a phone conversation with Athena, who represents the Wilma. I think she's part of the ownership. And she was very excited, first off, that we reached out. They're celebrating their 100th anniversary this year and plan to take advantage of the other activities throughout the month and would very much like to be in synergy with whatever activities and whatever things that we can provide the Wilma. At the very top of her list in terms of interest was to be part of a bike tour or other tours. But bike tour was definitely got a lot of reaction out of that. And she said, oh boy, if you can help us, have it be a start or a stop or just a stop along the way on those tours, that would be wonderful. They're planning on having the lobby open and possibly having some limited attendance events inside. That's still a possibility for them. They also are running promotions for some of the tenants. The restaurant on the lower level, Scotty's Table, is going to have a special menu on 1920s menu. I'm not sure what that will be, but there'll be a special menu, and we can help promote that. We can. Some of the other businesses are giving coupons off and a raffle for $100, 100 years, $100. So they're planning some good activities. Their challenge, of course, is the construction on the bridge. But they're, and the coming out of COVID, but I think that they are very welcome to anything we can do to help highlight the 100-year celebrations. As it stands right now, I emailed back and forth with her today, with her meaning Athena, and she's waiting to hear back from us on some specifics regarding the bike tour and anything else that we can help out with.
Yeah. Okay, well, very good. I think the biggest challenge here is that we're probably not going to have a formal bike tour where we have, 30 people on bikes following someone around and making all this work. It's probably going to be more, if we do anything, is for people to do it on their own and provide them a map or whatever that I've was able to pull out my 5 maps that I've done over the years, going back to in the 90s when we did that huge exhibit on A.J. Gibson at the Cycle Museum in Fort Missoula. And we had a great map that people could use to just look at the A.J. Gibson buildings all the way from downtown Missoula all the way out to the university and in the neighborhoods. And that worked pretty well. And I've got that. It got a few errors on it that I've found over the years here. So we need to do some changes in that, but that's a possibility. I also have the bike tour that we did for the trolley, starting at the north end of Higgins and coming down across the bridge to Connell, and then turning towards the university to Maurice and across the university, showing the buildings there, and then to the original country club, which is where, of course, the soccer fields are, and the small, 9-hole golf course is still out there today. So that's one possibility. We also have the bus tour that we did from where the trolley came off of the tracks into Missoula at the bridge there across the Rattlesnake. The piers are still there, and then went through downtown Missoula, down through the both the downtown historic district, but also across the bridge to the south side and west side historic districts, and then down to along the tracks, the Bitterroot tracks down to Fort Missoula, and then to the point where it ended at Fort Missoula. So I have those maps available. I also have the map where we did a bicycle tour of the university neighborhood, and we're able to talk about the different styles and some of the architects that were involved. And I was able to find those notes that actually Emmy put together, and that could be a possibility to quickly put something together. I'm not sure we're going to be able to do all of this, but I think if we could do something that tied in the downtown with mainly the university area and the university itself, we could have a pretty good tour that people could take on their own and have information that we could put together for a potential on your own bike tour, possibly as part of this. And then if we do something just to promote those legacy awards from last year and the preservation awards that we had, I believe there's only 4 preservation awards, and then was it 4 legacy awards, and then tie in the Rome. That could be something if we could get the media some way to promote that. We could provide them the information that we already have. It's kind of late being April and May coming up here shortly, and I'm not going to be able to I'm gone between next Tuesday and May 4th, so I'm not going to be able to do a lot, but Lavelle and Elizabeth and I are going to meet on Friday, and I'll go over these, the information I have. If there's any way we can pull us together and at least get one map out there that people could take and do a bike tour or whatever they might want to do in order to see some of the architecture and some of the history of Missoula. And then I know, Leif, that with your Unseen Missoula, you are going to do a couple of small group tours on Unseen Missoula as part of this with the other bike group that Jesse is involved with. And you might want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, Unseen Missoula. Well, Unseen Missoula will have the regular downtown walking tours. There's two, one for the southern part of downtown and the other for the railroad district. So those are going on all summer and spring starting. They've already started. So we could include those as part of it. And then we're going to do a bike tour along the river trails on May 19th. That will be advertised along with the bike pedestrian tours that they're doing. So that will be through Unseen Missoula as well, but that will be a guided tour, as are the walking tours downtown. And then if we get enough people for that, we might do another bike tour the following week too. But definitely on May 19th, there'll be one. But
you're limiting that to what, 10 people?
Yeah, I think it's 10. Yeah, I'd have to check with Kalina, but yeah. So if you want materials on that, Kalina's the best. She'll have all the graphics and that sort of thing. If people want that for a newsletter or anything like that.
Jim, do we have? I know banners have been discussed in the past, and the fact that we can't put them up on the bridge this year because of the construction. Are they available to put up in downtown? And is MDA on board to do that?
Well, there's a cost of about $500 to preserve Historic Missoula has paid in the past, and to put those up, and they decided not to do that this year because of all the construction, because they like the hip strip and the bridge and that first part of around the Wilma and up to about Main Street, and it just seemed to be too complicated this year. And in the meantime, well, we would have had to have done that more in February, or even January to get a spot. But someone else has already put up their banners for this month and next month too. So. Okay.
So we're preempted regardless. So
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. Anything else to report on Preservation Month?
Not that I have.
Sounds like there's a number of things in the works, and obviously your meeting on Friday will crystallize things to some extent, and that's great.
Yeah, hopefully we can.
Any other questions?
Excuse me, Ken, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say anything else we need to say about this at this point.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm hoping, Lavelle, that we could get the graphics people to just modify these maps, because they should have the base maps, because they did all these maps, all four of them. So hopefully they still have that information. We just need to modify them. We could maybe then provide them for someone to use to do a bike tour or walking tour or whatever they might want to do.
We have new graphics people. So, but I think we have time too, which is nice.
Yeah.
I know that the awards process usually takes 3, 4, 5 months to get for something to celebrate in May. But for this year, with the effort being primarily online, with the maps that people can self-guide with, and recognition of the legacy and award-winning projects. I think we have Elizabeth with us now and more manpower, person power. So, and I don't know, Elizabeth, you feeling like you've got some momentum, gonna learn a lot and, you know, test out our systems and stuff to be able to put something out there and up for folks?
Well, I think I will figure it out between now and then. I did also want to say that there is that city cemetery tour that I think is May 16th and 17th. I am drawing a blank on the contact for that, but I think there's a lot that we can do in the limited time that we have. I think that we should definitely explore upping our social media presence. Preservation Month is a good way to start showing not only Missoulans, but the rest of the country kind of what it is that Missoula does here for preservation, and social media and the joy of hashtags is a very easy way to do that. And I think that, Jim, meeting with you and getting a chance to see some of these maps. I mean, I don't have nearly the experience that a graphics team does, but I have put together driving tours and walking tours before. So I do come into this with a little bit of experience. So I think when we're able to meet Friday and hash some of these things out a little bit more and find out exactly what it is that I'm working with, I'll have a better idea. But there's certainly, I mean, it feels like May is right around the corner, and in some ways it is, but there's still a few weeks to get some things put together. So just let me take the weekend and brainstorm a little bit more. And after talking to you, Jim, I'll have I think a pretty good idea of where we're at in terms of tours, and then see what we can't throw together before May.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, you know, it's going to be just one tour. We're not going to do all 4 tours or all the different things, but there's enough information here that I think we can put together if we can get some way to put it into a map or drawing, whatever it is that allows people to take it and have a good time. So anyway.
Or if you do happen to use the trolley stuff, just make sure that 14th and Catlin is not on there, because we've got the gates locked.
Yeah.
It's just not open to the public right now.
Okay.
Just because of COVID. But I have mentioned to the Forest Service that we do hope to do a tour maybe again next year.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we would do that Bonner to Fort Missoula. That's a long tour, and that's where the trolley car buildings are. So anyway, yeah, that'd be another year. Yeah.
Okay, anything else on Preservation Month? Okay.
Laval.
Yeah, Laval.
So one of the things that we probably need to flesh out a little bit more is the promotion and recognition of the awards and legacy businesses from the year before. And again, that might be something that Elizabeth can put more thought into. I think if we combine a lot of recognition into posters that could go around town, flyers of some sort, website presence. And so some ideas had been thrown out regarding ways to try to recognize that. And I think that it's still ideas in the works, I guess I would have to say. We could provide an update at the next May meeting on that. If anybody has additional ideas that you want to share over to Elizabeth, she could maybe try to create some combinations and such. But I would say that's probably one of the things that is like a little less developed.
And Laval, you're going to be part of that meeting on Friday with Jim and Elizabeth? Okay, yeah. That sounds like a very important meeting to kind of get things sort of pulled together, so super.
And
Anything
then
else on that right now? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we need to, that coordination with the Wilma and any, next steps there, or, if thinking about how that interacts with some of the other options. Again, maybe Elizabeth can keep brainstorming ideas. Is there, do you want us to report back to the big group in May? Is there a need for a subcommittee meeting? How would you like to proceed?
Well, it seems to me if Jim is leaving next week, you're leaving when, Jim? You're muted.
I'm muted. Yeah, I'm muted. Sorry, Tuesday afternoon.
So you're probably getting stuff ready to go. So
Yeah.
probably
After Friday, I'm not going to have
now,
much
so
time.
yeah, I'm just thinking that perhaps we ought to try. Well, oh gosh, I can't attend probably any meetings all next week. I'm on this accreditation visit that's we're spanning 3 time zones and trying to coordinate stuff all across the country. And so I probably can't take part, but I think those of you involved with this, well, maybe after Friday, we can get a report back from you, Laval, and Elizabeth about the urgency or necessity of meeting again.
Yeah, that would be good.
Mr. Chairman, Jim and Laval, if you like, I can be available for the Friday meeting. I might be able to fill in some gaps. Jim, if you like, I'm just putting it out there. I will stay in touch with the Wilma, so it's up to you. If you want me to be involved, I can. If not.
Are we going to be able to meet in person, or are we going to?
Well, my reactions to the COVID thing were for my second shot. So I think I'm pretty good to meet in person at some distance. I always wear a mask. So it's up to you. Willing to do it in person.
This is more for Laval and Elizabeth, because I know.
Right, we can't do it in person.
Okay.
So did we send you a Zoom link? I think so, right? I'll extend the Zoom link,
Yeah, I don't
John.
know when yet. I'll check, but yeah.
All right. I'll check, but if you could resend it, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
But then I'll be able to get you these copies of these maps and
Right.
put that to you.
Yeah, if you could get those just delivered to or we could stop by your office and pick something up outside the door or whatever, we'll work on it. We need the physical material is what Jim is talking about.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about what we can do with the material.
Yeah.
And I think, Kent, it's a great idea for us to kind of provide maybe a bit of an update to the committee after like a written update after Friday, and after Elizabeth has had a chance to maybe absorb some of the information and think of some, what connects all of it, and if you've got some other ideas. And then we can go from there in terms of, after you get that report, decide if you want to find a time to meet mid-month or something. We're certainly available.
Okay.
That sounds good. I think that would be a good way forward. Anything else on Historic Preservation Month? Okay, sounds like the train has started, so we'll keep it moving. Item both 6.3 and 6.4 are ongoing and pending, and we're waiting for Elizabeth to get up to speed before we do anything substantive on those. And so I guess from that, we'll move forward to 6.5, Building Watch. Anybody have anything to report on buildings that they're aware of that are endangered or we should be aware of as part of our building watch item?
I guess the unfortunate one is those houses along um,
On Fourth?
on Fourth, yeah, that are all
Yeah,
taken down
I
now.
know.
Well, that came
I
up
saw the
quick. I
item.
don't know what happened there, but
Did we not have comment ability on demo permits?
That project was part of a deeper development agreement process that Emmy participated in with the council on other conditions of the development agreement. And I think she shared what those conditions of the demo permit would be. And then they met those conditions. And the historic I don't know the skill set, but somebody came in and gave you a presentation on the what they had discovered, what they'd learned from reviewing the property, and some of their ideas on interpretation.
Oh, you guys are talking 4th Street, yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Isn't that?
No, I'm talking about the church property.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
What is it? I forgot the church now. St. Paul's, or not St. Paul's? No, for Pete's sake.
so that's on 5th Street,
Yeah,
West 5th,
Fifth. Yeah,
right across from the old school admin building for 6th Street,
6th Street. Yeah.
6th Street.
Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah. So there's a row of houses that got taken down, but I may have missed something or I may have missed a meeting, but I don't recall that ever coming to the board.
Yeah.
And that's what I was asking about. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About did we not have at least some comment on a demolition permit?
I don't recall the address or the property, but we can provide an update at a next staff report process to let you know what was reported. We can look into it further.
Okay, yeah, because I feel like we should have seen something, because normally we do. And like I said, I may have missed it, but did everybody else miss it, or did we see something on that one? Because I'm right now I'm thinking we didn't see anything on that one.
No.
And even though I know we don't have a lot of teeth sometimes, we usually do at least have the ability to comment on it.
Do you all have at least a general address that I could start looking for?
Oh, hang
Even
on.
if it's a 600 block or something like that?
Yeah. Keep talking. I'll dig something up here because I've got the county property search open in another window.
I
We
would
got a
check
few
on
comments to us from Preserve Historic Missoula about not being aware of those, or at least I did. And I wasn't aware of it. Yeah.
so you usually
Oops. So it was 3 houses on South 6th West, right? Where's the address? It says no physical address. Just a second.
Are they directly across from the old school admin building?
They are. So it's the 200 block of South 6th West. And the parking lot has an address of 208 South 6th West. But the 3 properties that are coming up, the property search says no physical address. So it's the
Do you have the legal description maybe, since you're looking at that?
Yeah, legal description, Knowles Edition #1, Block 2, Lot 9. And then it's got a COS of 5008.
Okay.
So it's going to be.
Well, good.
We'll just take a look at it and provide an update in the next staff report.
So it's Knowles Edition #1, Block 2, Lots 7, 8, and 9, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the main thing that came up was that we did look years ago at where the parking lot is there. There was a house that was moved rather than torn down in order to expand that parking lot. But the question that came up to me was, why didn't we see if we could get those 3 houses moved too and not torn down? So that's, but it's already too late. They're evidently down.
Yeah.
Just about down, so.
And I don't know the background and what the precedent of the process or project was. But we will look into what the purview is on HPC. It's usually a preservation officer that provides the sign off on it and reviews it to see if it is an individually listed building. And then of course, that's a whole nother story. So there isn't a, if it's contributing, they can still demolish it, but we try to make a note of that and make sure they know there's a
because it would have nice to have had at least the ability to try to be proactive. But I just got a few emails in the last couple of days saying, wow, look, they tore them down. Where were you guys?
I got the same ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, and FYI, the building on the corner that was torn down shows up on Google Earth Street View as having the address of 246. So that'll narrow it down for you, Jen.
Thank you. That's still Cell 6 West?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks.
Anything further on Building Watch?
I live right across the street from it, at least my office, but the Union Block that has been being preserved, the old Radio Central building. If you haven't been by lately, drive by. It's nice to see something truly preservation minded happening in downtown Missoula. So it's kind of inspiring to look out the window and see some good work going on. But swing by the old Radio Central building if you haven't been by in a while and take a look at it, because it's not the Radio Central building anymore. And you'll be a little bit surprised by the amount of glass on the second floor. But there's an old photo and a rendering from when it was built that was published in the paper that shows something very similar. It shows a lot of glass on the second floor. It's kind of startling, but it is relatively accurate. So.
Good to know. Thanks, Steve.
You bet.
Anything else on Building Watch? Okay, let's move along to our Historic Preservation Officer staff report and project notification. And I guess, Jen, you prepared the report that we have in our packet. So if you could want to just brief, do it, whatever you think is appropriate on that.
I'll just read it. So under general topics tonight, staff's going to need to finish the CLG process for the 2020-2021 grant cycle. So we need all your volunteer hours submitted for the end of the year report. If you all would just return those to Elizabeth, and I can give you her email real quick. It's like any other city email, johnsone@ci.missoula.mt.us. And so those are for the new folks. Those are all those volunteer sheets that we gave you to write those down and then get them to Elizabeth. We need to turn that in by April 30th. So as soon as you can get those to us, like in the next week or so, that would be appreciated. We were talking about demolition applications. We've had 4 that I can tell you about. The first 2 were both single family structures and the buildings were not listed and they were also outside of historic districts. One was on 2432 North Avenue and the other was 816 Cooley. And that permit actually came through with 816 and 816 and a half. But when I was looking at it, I'm not sure that there really was still 2 structures there, but both of those demolition permits were approved. Staff's been contacted by MMW Architects regarding the Reed project, which was the 4th Street project. And they were checking to be sure that all the conditions have been met so a demolition permit could be requested, and all the conditions have been met. And I expect that they'll be in to request a demolition permit in the near future. Jackson Contractor Group requested a demolition permit for Building 36 at the Fairgrounds. It was the structure. It's about a 7,600 square foot maintenance building, and it's going to be deconstructed, and most of the materials will be reused in several different projects, including the upcoming Rocky Mountain Garden and Exploration Center. Under project consultations and updates, we have the U of M Music Building. The U of M Music Building will be renovated. Work will primarily be internal with a remodel of the 2 main rehearsal rooms and includes a remodel of the practice rooms, new mechanical systems, and the removal of an existing stair. And the applicant is working with Eric Newcomb of SHPO, who had a favorable opinion of the design and made a few suggestions that will be incorporated into the renovations. University Apartments, staff is still coordinating a consult regarding a request for an exterior alteration to one of the units. And we're trying to get that clarified, and we'll meet with the clients along with Steve Adler when they get back with us. The Bissinger warehouse, Mr. Morgan has decided not to go forward with the addition of the AR overlay to his parcel, but has instead decided to create a vertical mixed use project, which is allowed by right. Mr. Morgan will continue on with the process to add his parcel to the local register of historic landmarks, which will allow him to take advantage of a parking reduction found in Title 20. Staff is preparing a resolution to bring forward to the Land Use and Planning Committee on April 14th. And this is the first step to getting the City Council to approve a resolution for including the parcel on our local historic resource list. Approval of the resolution will enable the applicant to apply for a parking reduction for the current project. And in addition, placing the parcel on the local register of historic places will require it be subject to an historic preservation permit for this current project and any subsequent project in perpetuity. So the HPC will need to review the project, and staff will be providing you with updates as well as guiding the application process for the future historic preservation permit. But as of now, the project is proposed to be scheduled to come before the commission for that permit during your June meeting. And then lastly, the batting cages at Fort Missoula. A request has been made of Donna Goffler to set up a meeting with Dan Hall to make a field visit. And it will include several HPC members. And when a scheduled time and day has been decided on, staff will let you know. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Jan. I just have to comment on the maintenance building at the Fairgrounds. Having toured it many years ago, it was about to fall then, and it's sort of merciful that it is finally coming down, and it'll be interesting to see what they can get out of there to recycle, because the previous fair manager, whose name escapes me right now, was keeping all kinds of critters in there and with the equipment, and so it's a merciful end to a building that was long overdue to be torn down.
There are some great materials, and there are some great beams and wood and everything that they're going to use in the new building. So that's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm sure that the structure above the floor is probably a lot of good stuff, but everything from sort of waist level down was anyway. All right, item 8, board member comments. This is an opportunity for those of you on the board who have other things you want to comment on to bring those forward. I think everybody's tired. Wants to end this.
I have one question that I'd like people to think about for the pending PUD and possibly HPP for the Fort Missoula hospital building. And one thing I'm not real clear on is, yes, we get to comment on design, pattern, kind of spacing, context, but do we as a commission get to comment on use? Which I think might be a good discussion to have. Because yes, design elements, context, yes, we do have the jurisdiction, if you will, to comment on all of that. But I wasn't real clear on if we can comment on use. And so if anybody has any insights or wants to chat about that later, I would sure welcome it, because I think I need a little more education on it.
So Steve, this is John Chase. Like I said, that's a big part of my life, to actually move plan developments forward in 2 different states. I don't do that work in Missoula, but the guidelines are generally the same. And I'll tell you that it depends on the broad commission, the commissions that I've been on, but on other commissions, we've been able to address that using the Department of the Interior's guidelines, specifically the one that talks about being in harmony. And I forget the specific language. You and I can talk, directly. I'd love to get some of your insights. We can trade info. You can help me get my feet more wet in Missoula historic preservation, and I can share with you some of the things that I've done on the developer side and also on historic preservation side as it relates specifically to use. Because I agree with you that, to me, stepping back from the view from a historic preservation view, that's a big challenge. The use is a big challenge. And I haven't been here that long, but that was the 2 times I was there. I kept walking around thinking, boy, in all this public land, you're going to have private landowners, and there's going to be a rub. I'm just voicing that. I don't know if the chair of the commission thinks that it's appropriate for us to go there. So I'm here to help and give you the benefit of some of my experience where we've actually, as a historic preservation commission, we were able to provide guidance to the council about use.
So this is Lavelle. Thank you, John, for some background from other places. Provided some communications about the fact that this is a project, this could be a project that would end up being reviewed through planning board and city council. City council makes a final decision on the PUD, and that's where the permission for uses would land. So you are, as an agency, you would be providing comment, but you would need to couch that comment on the fact that eventually you are also a deciding body on the preservation permits themselves. So that's where I think caution and care is being stressed. It's a little different than if you're an agency providing comment on a rezone that isn't also a preservation permit. In this case, it becomes a preservation permit. So you're asked to be cautious, to be able to provide guidance and suggestions. And if you need more specificity around, I think you can do that even related to use. suggestions. I heard some great discussion today, but not firm commitments of an expression of some one thing one way or another is the indications that I've heard in terms of trying to help you with this guidance. We can keep providing additional guidance as we get deeper into this process, if that's helpful.
And John, if you look at I just looked it up again. Laval sent out a very comprehensive email yesterday to everybody about what the city attorney's office basically said about what the best way we should couch our questions and so forth in this process. And, certainly review that again, and your insights will be helpful, obviously, as we move forward. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and my worry, thank you, Laval, for that summary, because my worry is, yes, it's going to be an HPP application, and use will certainly shape a lot of what we end up reviewing. But usually we review in terms of context and style and appropriateness, basically. Not often do we get into the field of the actual use, the zoning use, and I'm wondering, are we okay commenting on use because that will shape what we look at in the future, what we're going to be looking at. So I'd kind of like some guidance on how much we can comment on use, knowing that we're going to be looking at an application that is shaped by the use. So yeah,
I think that we should be able to, because we're discussing a public park, whereas everything else that we've discussed, like you said, it's been an individual building or group of buildings. This is a very different application in that it's not just a building, it is a public park, and it also interacts with so many other stakeholders. So, and there is NPS guidance on that. And I think it's one of the tech tips. I haven't found it yet online, but I would assume that, yes, we can discuss that. And so, Laval, yes?
To the extent that you're not expressing committed opinions, and what you're providing comment on is, has the guidance from the various documents we've been talking about and what very well. You just have to stay away from a committed statement of a particular thing you don't like or you really do like, because that can set up for some issues later on as a preservation permit goes.
So I have a question. When you say a committed opinion, by the time it comes to an HPP and we get to review it, do we get to have a committed opinion then? I mean, if there's something that we as a commission feel strongly about, when do we get to say that?
we get to have an opinion, but our opinion needs to be couched in the terms of the Secretary of the Interior standards and the review document that we have that says, yes, you review applications in the fort for these subjects. So you don't get to just say, I think it's ugly, because that's a personal opinion. But if you say, listen, the massing and the materials are not sympathetic enough, that's fair game, because that's how our guidelines are written. So we have to couch our opinions in terms of the guidelines and the documents we have adopted as our basis of judgment.
And some of that, what I'm hearing is there's some bleed through between opinions and the guidelines, especially when you're speaking in terms of space and how the public uses everything. And what I'm hearing is some questions on that in some gray area there, because we do seem to want to discuss this public space. Does that make sense, Laval?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that, again, with Elizabeth's help here, fresh on board, we'll keep working on providing and answering questions for you, getting additional guidance. There's a connection we've not worked within before, which is PUD process to an HPC and the HPP process. So we'll keep helping, providing guidance, and I just urge you to keep thinking in terms of the openness of your review until the point you have to land on a preservation permit review. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Val.
Thank you for your patience.
Well, and thank you again for both the memo yesterday to us clarifying what the city attorney's office said, and also the framework memo that you put out as well. That was extremely helpful background about this whole process. And those of you that maybe haven't had a chance to look at it, I advise that you should do so before our next. Anything further on any of that? Okay, moving on to item 9, announcements, the news, any upcoming events. I think we pretty well covered that in Preservation Month discussion, but is there anything we overlooked?
I did actually have one go back. You know, we put together all the little biographies for Elizabeth. With the new people on board, can we maybe share those among our committee members? Because we just can't pop over to the bar and get to know everybody.
Excellent idea, Kathy. Yeah, I think if we can make those available to everybody, it would be good.
And the other thing, tonight there was a training for boards for the city and county. And Paul went to, that's why he couldn't be here tonight, because the county was insistent that he attend that, and I was too, but I was able to change it because they are going to have another board training. I think it's in August or so, but it'd be good for everybody who hasn't, or especially new members, but also everybody who hasn't done that in the last couple of years, which I haven't. It'd be good to do that again. So.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And Laval, didn't you mention, or somebody mentioned that one that Paul's attending today is going to be on a YouTube video that we can access later?
There will be a recording of that training that's today. I'm not sure where the access will be, but there will be a recording. So yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Kyla at the county will get that all out. So.
Any other announcements? I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Doesn't require a second. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, you all. Good meeting. Safe travels, Jim.
Thanks, Kent.